It's finally Friday. It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
All right, welcome back to the Friday Show, presented by Indiana Racing and that state's Breed Development Fund. More than $16 million in incentives in Indiana Racing. I'm Scott Jagow, along with Ray Paulick. So glad you could join us. Ray, let's talk about this new triple series that the New York Racing Association announced this week. It includes two different series for 3-year-olds, one for the colts, one for the fillies, the triple tiara and the triple trinity. Interesting idea. I mean, it looks like maybe American racing is turning an eye more towards running on the grass. Is that what I'm seeing here?
Oh, I think we've seen this happening gradually with more turf races being carted throughout the country, in part because they get bigger fields, and that's good for wagering. But there's been a hole in the schedule, really, for top-class turf 3-year-olds. And this New York Racing Association initiative is designed to sort of mirror the Triple Crown on dirt, with a 1.25 miles, 1 3/16, and 1.5 miles turf races. Now, what this is going to do, I think, is put pressure on some of the other existing races, and there aren't really that many. You have the Secretariat Stakes at Arlington in August, and Del Mar has the Oaks and Derby on turf for 3-year-olds. It might hurt those races a little bit, but I think this is a really interesting move by NYRA.
Well, I think the bigger picture here is that, Martin Panza from NYRA was saying this is going to benefit farms. It's going to benefit stallions who throw turf runners. And overall, we are looking more towards racing on the turf. We're seeing more horses go to Royal Ascot, participate in the Dubai World Cup turf races and other events. The Pegasus Turf, first year of that this year. So definitely it feels like the industry is shifting a little bit. And as you pointed out, it could put pressure on other races, but this is just another example of how competitive the racing business is between tracks right now. I mean, not only did NYRA do this, they also announced this week a ship and win program. So if you come from Oaklawn or the Florida tracks or Fairhill Training Center, you're going to get a bonus for racing in New York. So that's obviously poaching horses from other tracks with a dwindling horse population. It's very competitive.
Yeah, you mentioned Panza's quote about stallions and farms and all that. There's really only a couple of truly successful turf sires, Warfront and Kitten's Joy, but you're seeing more farms that are willing to stand, I think, turf stallions, and we'll see how that pans out. You got Oscar Performance going to Millridge this year as one example, but I talked to Mark Cassie about turf racing, and I said, have you ever had an owner tell you to go to the sales and look for a really good turf horse? And he said, never. He said they all want to win a race on the first Friday in May or the first Saturday in May. So until the owners kind of change their mindset and say, winning a triple crown of turf races wouldn't be such a bad thing. Until that day comes, I think we'll see dirt racing is still going to be #1 in America.
I guess what you're saying is that owners aren't looking for turf runners, but when they find out their horses can't run on dirt, there are a lot of options out there. And this is a business where, staying above water is very crucial to being in the business. I know these guys have a lot of money and they expect to lose. They're just trying to lose less each year. And when you can win a big race, like say the Pegasus Turf, that pays a lot of bills. So it makes sense. And when you have a runner on dirt who loses or who can't perform, they're 20 lengths behind the winner. That's not a very appealing visual as an owner. But in a turf race, they might only be 4 or 5 lengths behind the winner because, at top of the stretch, they're all competing, and usually it's, bunched up, and then you lose, and it doesn't look that bad. And I honestly think that is part of it.
You're right. And I think that's probably part of the attraction for the increase of even cheaper horses racing on turf too, is that they're more competitive. Handicapping those races, I think, is more interesting, because a horse that gets beat is 3 or 4 lengths back. You can make that up. With a bad trip, you can make a case for a horse. But when a horse gets beat 20 lengths in the dirt, like you said, it's hard to see a form reversal. Because they're just not going to move up that much on the dirt. So, I think this move toward turf is interesting. But as long as NBC or another major network is showing the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness, and the Belmont Stakes, and those owners can stand in the winner's circle, hold that trophy in the air, and be on national television, the Triple Crown is still going to be what drives the business, especially at horse sales.
Sure, but that doesn't mean that we have to go forward as a business thinking, oh, it's all Triple Crown or nothing. I mean, there are too many opportunities in this business to make money as an owner and as a trainer to think like that. And you can say the Triple Crown leads everything and all that, but if you take even a bigger scope of this, internationally, what surface do horses run on? I mean, primarily it's turf. So it's smart. I think it's smart in order to attract international competitors in our big races. Breeders' Cup, we get some, but there's opportunity for us to get international runners in other races. Maybe some of these 3-year-old races in New York could attract foreign competition, but you're not going to get much foreign competition coming over to run on dirt. We've seen that, except maybe the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, in fact, I think you're right that this New York series is going to attract, even though it's right in the middle of the European season. I think this series is going to attract some European horses, and that makes it interesting. It makes it competitive, and let's face it, we have not had the deepest crops of turf horses in recent years, and we see it when the Breeders' Cup rolls around, and generally the Europeans tend to dominate.
But I also like the idea of having more of a partnership with other countries, because it is a sport where it's tough going sometimes, and we're contracting. We're seeing the dwindling horse population. So anything we can do to partner up and have agreements with or get other horses from other countries, I think that's positive for the sport here. And it's just you just have to think globally. But at the same time, this program will cut into other races, as we mentioned earlier. So I'm wondering, with this plus NYRA's Ship and Win program, I mean, do you think this is all good for the industry?
Well, it's a competitive world out there. We've got Oaklawn Park extending their meet till Kentucky Derby weekend, which is going to put more pressure on Keeneland. You've got Colonial Downs reopening this summer, which is going to put more pressure on the Mid-Atlantic. It's a very competitive landscape right now. Even though the horse population is dwindling, tracks are trying to increase their market share. So, we'll have to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, I'm in favor of competition, and I know that the owners and horse players want it. They want options, so I think This is all good. Survival of the fittest, I guess, and we'll see what happens going forward. What do you think about this idea of the turf series? Is this something you're in favor of, the idea of going more towards turf in the future for American racing? We have a poll on our website, so you can share your thoughts with us. Friday's show is presented by Indiana Racing and that state's Breed Development Fund. More than 20 stakes with purses over $100,000 for Indiana-bred, Indiana-sired horses. That's going to do it for this edition of the show. We'll talk to you next time.